again. So, fact number one, Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and he exists eternally, unaffected by the temporary material existence of time and space. Not only Lord Krishna, but the soul also, right?
Yes.
Soul situated in every body that is online and offline and bugs and everything else. So,
Yes.
so that would mean that as Lord Krishna is existing eternally, unaffected by temporary material existence of time and space, the soul similarly is existing.
All of his parts and parcels
Yes.
never cease to exist.
Yes.
So if Krishna is existing, his parts and parcels exist within him, and regardless of what bodies they're taking, they still exist, and they will exist inside of Krishna in one way or another, in manifested bodies, most presumably, for the next 10,000 years.
Yes. Okay.
But they may not understand what their relationship is to Prabhupada or ISKCON unless Prabhupada and ISKCON are preserved.
Yes. Anyone else like to comment on number one? Vinayak Prabhu, Rupa? If anything, just jump in. Okay, number two. Oh, this one here. Second fact. Srila Prabhupada, as Krishna's transparent via medium, the Uttama Adhikari, and who eternally resides in Krishna Loka, also exists eternally and cannot be affected by the temporary material existence of time and space. Yes. Krishna says himself, that which is eternal, there's no cessation for it in the Bhagavad Gita. So spiritual knowledge, what Prabhupada has given. Yes. Transparent by medium, Uttama Adhikari. So one might question that if the Krishna consciousness always existed, why did Prabhupada had to come to America and give it?
Because we didn't want it.
Okay. That's very simple.
We wanted to look in the mirror. That's why Prabhupada came to persuade us to give up what we see in the mirror in exchange for our eternal Swarup in relation to Krishna. And through our hearing capacity to chant the Hare Krishna mantra wide and far. We are the bewitched. We're enchanted. Prabhupada came and enchanted people that were not going to become humans in their next life. They'd become cockroaches. And Prabhupada gave us the chance to step forward and not only be saved, hallelujah, those are Christian-like things, not saved, but delivered from repeated birth and death, but to immediately deliver others so that when they hear the Hare Krishna mantra once, they will be able to eventually, when they give up their bodily consciousness, go back to Godhead.
Try, okay.
But their going back to Godhead will be assured.
Okay. Fact 3. ISKCON I Incorporated has been manifested by Krishna and Srila Prabhupada, and for that reason cannot be affected by the temporary material existence of time and space. So you're saying that ISKCON has been manifested by Krishna and Srila Prabhupada, and for that reason cannot be affected by temporary material existence of time and space. So the present day so-called ISKCON, which is going on, GBC of West Bengal controlling it, how is that affected?
Oh, well, they think that. People have a bad feeling about ISKCON because ISKCON is no longer, they feel badly about the ISKCON that the GBC has polluted itself into being. Take away the GBC. Just push them out the door and shut the door and lock it. And then you will see that ISKCON is transcendentally beautiful, the way it was when Prabhupada first came. He created ISKCON and people loved it.
Joy.
But the GBC turned it into a poisonous vessel and then mistreated people in ISKCON, supposedly in ISKCON, so that they learned to hate or distrust or be disappointed in ISKCON. But there's nothing inherent. ISKCON came from Krishna Loka. Just like Narottam Das Thakur says about the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna comes straight from Krishna Loka. But with chanting, I have no connection. So ISKCON came straight from Krishna Loka. But with ISKCON, because of GBC, I have no connection with ISKCON. I'm sick of it. I'm mad at it. Why be mad at ISKCON? When I joined ISKCON, nobody hated ISKCON. They don't hate ISKCON because of the GBC. Get rid of the GBC. No one could possibly hate ISKCON up to that. ISKCON will, just like you take a beautiful jewel and it's been dumped into muck, into stool, or whatever is dumped in, you take it out and you dangle it up there stinking on a piece of gold chain. Nobody wants it. It's horrible. I don't want anything to do with it. So, but then you polish it, you clean it, you wash it, you shine it, you detail it, you make it gorgeous again, metal polish and everything. And people say, that's wonderful. Oh, that's the same thing you said you didn't like because it was so contaminated. But this is beautiful. It's not contaminated. No, the contamination never extended into ISKCON. It just coated it. And who coated it? We coated it. We, by obeying the GBC, covered ISKCON with grime. Okay?
Got it.
Is there more to be said on that?
No, Prabhu. That's what I wanted to clarify.
Yes. So we have to, but you see, if you say ISKCON to people, they get nauseated because of what they've experienced. Even people that are living in temples are sort of nauseated because they have to go through stuff that they have to keep on eating crops in order to stay in the temple. And they feel it. Oh, ISKCON. They say, well, I'm hoping it because I want to go back to Godhead. ISKCON. But meanwhile, their stomachs, they're sick.
Okay.
Well, our job is to separate the GBC, push it out the door, lock the door, then come back to ISKCON and polish it, just like a gem, just like a beautiful crown or throne. Polish it and make it beautiful. Suddenly we'll see Prabhupada is existing in the center, just like a amethyst or a diamond or something is sitting inside the geode. Once it's cleaned up, nobody's going to say, oh, throw that in the trash. But now the GBC have expertly separated us from Krishna, from Prabhupada.
Okay.
They expertly replaced Prabhupada. They made Prabhupada into a distant figure in the past. Oh, you have to have another fresh guru. You have to have a new guru. You have to have a replacement guru. And I say, Prabhupada said, I will live forever in his books. Why do we need a replacement anything? What we need is a replacement GBC that's elected, not tyrannically holding on to money and power and land and torturing people. Anyhow, go ahead.
Okay, so I spaced out. Where were we? Did we read this part already?
Yeah, we read that one already.
Okay, so fact. ISKCON in 1966. The direction of management created by Lord Krishna via his transparent via medium, Srila Prabhupada, cannot be considered to be affected by the passage of time.
I made a mistake there. It says ISKCON in 1966 and the GBC in 1970, then the direction of management. You see, it misses the GBC in the part. But yeah, that's a mistake.
Okay. The direction of management. Okay, got it. Let's see. Cannot be considered to be affected by the passage of time. So how can we differentiate between management and something which is spiritual? For example, you're bringing up a point that the direction of management is spiritual, but it has nothing to do with spiritual life.
No, the direction of management isn't spiritual. it facilitates spiritual.
Okay.
In other words, if you have supposing somebody, supposing you have temples popping up all over the place because all you have to do is incorporate it as ISKCON, walk inside and say, now I've got an ISKCON temple. I don't know what to do next. Am I supposed to have a picture of Krishna on the wall, or maybe a kirtan, or what am I supposed to do? So the GBC comes in and helps you set it all up. So they facilitate. Can a non-spiritual person be a GBC? Of course not. The GBC has to be a temple president, not even a congregation member, a temple president, because he's in charge of having a temple that functions Krishna consciously, spiritually, in such a way that people feel ecstasy when they hear Prabhupada's melodies, dance in ecstasy, take wonderful prasadam, see Prabhupada and see him see you from the Vyasa sun. Never about Prabhupada is just a figure stuck on the Vyasa sun. No, he sees you, and without the GBC, he will practically come and dance with you in the kirtan. He will be so present because he's not limited by time and space.
Right. Okay.
He's definitely not dead.
Okay, so let's read on.
Did that go far enough on that point?
Yes.
Yeah, the GBC, yeah. They facilitate spiritual. So we have two things in Krishna consciousness, always. And Prabhupada made that clear. The practical and the transcendental. You have to have transcendental dancing and chanting. If you want a temple, you have to have the practical. How do you rent it? How do you buy it? How do you decorate it? How do you do this stuff, I was all sorts of things, but I concentrated on the practical. How to carve devis, how to decorate temples, how to lead people out on Sankirtan. I was always like that. I never became a saintly person, and I'm still clearly not a saintly person.
Okay,
so
let's continue.
Yeah.
Since the passage of time does not exist in Krishna Loka, but only exists in the relative material world, there is no doubt that Krishna and Srila Prabhupada will fully exist in the present tense throughout the entire duration of the golden age of Kali.
Yes, isn't that right? Go ahead. What do you say?
1 second.
What would you like to say? Oh, what's happening?
Okay, it's pretty self-evident what is being said here, very clear. And this point also goes back.
It's clear in terms of common sense.
Yes.
And it's clear in terms of our understanding of Prabhupada and Krishna. But it's not clear to those people that are trying to help the GBC learn how to cross the street in India. They say, I cannot even understand what the chief manager says. He can't even imagine what's going to happen in a few years, what to speak of 500 years.
Because they're dealing with a relative material world, and they're trying to make deals, So
yeah, but they're not even considering that in 500 years, will Krishna be present or not present? Will Prabhupada be present? Oh, no, Prabhupada won't be present. There will be 10,000 iterations of female Diksha gurus by then. I mean, why do they require? You don't need initiation to become a devotee of Krishna, because the holy name is your initiation. The holy name you don't require a guru to give you the holy name. It's not like Gayatri is different, it has to be given to you. But the Hare Krishna mantra, no, it doesn't have to be given to you. You hear it, it's yours.
So dealing with
you are it. You belong to the holy name.
When we're dealing with the relative material world, like, for example, this body is relative also. Everyone's bodies are relative, right?
Yes.
So in this way, we know the spiritual life, spiritual instructions are absolute, meaning that it is true eternally. So when we converse with each other and converse with others, sometimes or most of the time we're speaking from the relative platform.
Yes. And that is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur warned us against.
Even a lot of devotees.
Sectarianism.
Yes.
I can hear the pure message of the pure devotee, but I cannot deliver it purely because I'm not a pure devotee. If I were a pure devotee and I tell you, you'll get it the same as it would have been from Prabhupada. But no, you'll hear what it is from me, having heard it from Prabhupada. And that's where the problem lies. So this whole thing that we're dealing with right here is to eliminate sectarianism. In other words, if we can consider that ISKCON, the deity, the Radha Krishna deities, the kirtans, the Prabhupada's melodies, has to be, the kirtan, the Swami step dancing, all of these things, the prasadam, all of these things are developed in 1966, 67, 68, 1770. Now take away the GBC, and now what about 500 years after that? What requires to be changed from the simple formula of 1968 ISKCON?
Nothing.
Nothing. And will it look different? Supposing you take birth in I took initiation in 1968. Supposing I take initiation in 500 years from now, and it's authentic Prabhupada ISKCON, authentic elected GBC, Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada's melodies has to be, Prabhupada's Mridanga has to be. Well, I see it as being significantly different than 1970. It'll be the same, no?
Yes, it'll be the same. Yes.
Now, what about the great enemy? What about the great disease called sectarianism? You see, keeping it exactly simple and exactly Prabhupada-centric without extra gurus, female or otherwise, without those extra things, it's very difficult to make it sectarian. How are you going to make it sectarian? And if you have a GBC, if you have authentic kirtans and it's all being done according to Prabhupada recordings and videos, and I mean, Prabhupada has left enough to deliver the whole universe, what to speak of just planet Earth just for 10,000 years. So, right? Okay, so I don't want to take up too much energy here, but here you have Prabhupada doing that. Where can sectarian step in? It can. People will try to chant their own melodies. And if the GBC is not alert, they'll say, no, you can't do that. You have to chant Prabhupada melodies. And they say, well, what about prasadam? Can't we have oysters? No, you have to have vegetarian Prabhupada prasadam, the way he taught us to cook. Does that make sense at all?
Yes.
Okay, so in that case, then let's just say on paper, who knows what it'll really be like, but let's just say theoretically on paper, a temple today, same temple in the same building, say 500 years from now, it will be the same ISKCON that it was when Prabhupada was here. Now, what about in other locations, Japan, China, Mexico? No, they'll all be the same because if they all use Prabhupada melodies, everything, it doesn't matter what language they speak in the temple. It matters how they sound like when they're chanting and how they are lecturing. And I do predict, and that's the end of this part, I think, for me, and I do predict that in the end, in 500 years' time or less, maybe 100 years' time, ISKCON will be all English language. I know that freaks people out, but the question is, Prabhupada wrote in English and translated in English. Yes. And we don't know how people translate it into Spanish or Portuguese, right, or whatever. So as people become more and more magnetized and enchanted by Prabhupada's direct association 500 years ago from now, their reading in English will become assured. Because why would they? And it will be then global. So that if you get a guy lecturing from Russia, he won't be speaking Russian. If his guy is from the Philippines, he won't be speaking Filipino. Or in Japan, he will not be
Okay,
speaking
let's
Japanese.
continue.
Yeah, but anyhow, even if they're all speaking their native tongues, it doesn't matter. The main thing is the essence must be pure Prabhupada the way he did it in 1968, 67, like that.
Okay, so for this
Go ahead.
reason, the entire criminal disruption of the spiritual relationship with Srila Prabhupada by the GBC in 1970 can be seen as a metastasized cancerous tumor that has carefully and deliberately removed accessibility to Srila Prabhupada. Yes, this is a very important point here, which uh, with the present day situation in the so-called ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada is totally not in the picture.
Could you read that sentence again?
Okay. For this reason, the entire criminal disruption of the spiritual relationship with Srila Prabhupada by the GBC in 1970 can be seen as a metastasized cancerous tumor that has carefully and deliberately removed accessibility to Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, this is going to be a tough one, isn't it? They say, but we have Guru Puja with Prabhupada every day. Yeah, a fiberglass figure on the altar where you want him to give you. You want him to give you his blessing to you. So you dance and dance. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, which is not bona fide melody, by the way. It's not bona fide chanting. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. You want him to give you something. You want him to justify the crap that you're doing. You want him to justify the melodies that aren't his melodies and the way of living that isn't in the way of dancing, which is not his way of dancing. You want him to give a paintbrush varnish that everything you're doing, it is okay, but it doesn't work that way. What you just read, I think, is the truth. They took it away. The GBC took away Prabhupada.
Yes. So with all the deviations and not following Srila Prabhupada's instructions, by perpetuating not following Srila Prabhupada's directions, like the direction of management, his kirtans, his original books, they are deliberately cutting off the prospective student to a connection with Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah, a direct connection.
Yes, a direct connection, exactly.
So they say you have to have a guru. Why? To prevent you from having a direct connection.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to go into the management. The management is to go out on Sankirtan. How many temples go out on Sankirtan? Oh, no, we want everybody in the temple. We don't want anyone to go out. So, I mean,
yeah,
there's blood on their hands. I would say the GBC has the blood of several million people directly on its hands. And in the court of Yamaraj, they're going to be presented with that evidence. And they will stare straight ahead and say, oh my God, if we'd known that this would happen, we wouldn't have done all that crap. We would have stuck with Prabhupada. But we thought we were just having fun and making a nice, profitable thing for ourselves with prestige. We didn't realize we were responsible for the deaths of millions of Iraqis.
Okay, so let's continue, Prabhu.
Go ahead, yes.
The GBC invented an illegal and atheistic perversion of Srila Prabhupada's direct written orders for the management of Lord Chaitanya's transfer of his gift of the Hare Krishna mantra to the living entities inhabiting planet Earth for the next 10,000 years, and instead created an illicit vehicle for their obtaining money and power.
Go ahead.
So one thing just to point out here, the term the GBC we're referring to is when we refer the term GBC, we mean what Prabhupada exactly wanted in the direction of management. So the present day people who are in the GBC, they're not actually GBC.
Well, but we have to take into account Prabhupada created the GBC in 1970,
yes,
and the GBC was then rebelled against in 1970.
Yeah.
So there was no time where they even had one election.
Yes. So
or obedience to their spiritual master.
So yes.
Which means they look. Just one little thought: if you disobey the direct written order of your spiritual master, the rule is accept everything the spiritual master says and reject nothing that the spiritual master says. If they have rejected, they cease to be a disciple. They forfeit their initiation. Prabhupada magically took these dead corpses of former devotees and kept them going like devotees. But they had lost their initiation by what they did, really, in true sense of the word.
So what do you mean by created an illicit vehicle for their obtaining money and power? So is that what the so-called people who are in management of Prabhupada's ISKCON doing? They're only collecting money and power, but this is temporary.
Yeah. Well, they don't care. I mean, everybody, the people who join ISKCON don't care. Oh, I'm going to join ISKCON. Now I'll go back to Godhead. Oh, really? Have you thought it through? No. I don't know how. Ask Chapataka, how are you going to go back to Godhead? I mean, by now he probably realizes he's not going to go back to Godhead. Unless having initiated Madhu Pandit will help him go back to Godhead. But you see what I'm just being humorous, I guess, although it's not funny. Yes, they made it impossible. And they've made going back to Godhead a pipe dream, not a concrete reality.
Okay, let's continue then.
Yes.
They stole sacred ISKCON from Srila Prabhupada and Krishna and created their own illicit operatic material organization starting in 1970 and still presently existing 52 years to this date. Yes, they hijacked Prabhupada's movement back in 1970.
Yeah.
And what you have now is just, what do you have now?
Well, now you have the name ISKCON, and you have the word GBC.
And
they created that organization, which they've maintained for 52 years. But may I point something out, Prabhu?
Yes.
What is 52 years out of 10,000?
It's a very fractional amount of time.
I mean, suppose you could live 1,000 years a year. How long would 52 years be? In other words, to us, it's a big deal because we live to be 80, 90, 100 years old.
Yes.
At best. But in terms of the 10,000 years of the golden age of Kali, it's just not even an embarrassing passing of air in the middle of a ceremonious occasion. I mean, is it as significant as passing air in a installation of a deity? I mean, it's so small, you cannot measure it. 52 years. That's a crude example like it. But anyhow, 52 years out of 10,000. It is a long time only if we do what the GBC is trying and the people trying to correct the GBC are doing, planning for their lifetimes, not ever anybody else's lifetime. Can you imagine people in their 70s planning for their own lifetime? I mean, that's considering we're supposedly transcendentalists Isn't that basically delusional?
Yeah. Okay, let's continue. In the 7 years between 1970 and 1977, the criminal GBC did not only stole ISKCON, but in 1977 murdered Lord Krishna's transparent via medium, Srila Prabhupada. Yes.
So if you look at that, okay, go ahead.
So they were scheming all along to take over the movement in any way possible and set up an illegal structure where they would be in power just for a few more years.
Yeah. Well, but they didn't think it was going to be a few years. They figured Prabhupada was so old he would probably die croak soon. So they would be still young, or their genitals still erect, to be able to be gurus in that dominate material nature mode that a male has over material nature. And that thought that's what they would be able to do. But he kept on living longer and longer. And his astrologer said he would, if his astrologer actually said that Prabhupada will live and will pass away in 77, but he will live an additional 10 years if he's not done in by his followers.
Oh,
Can you
yeah,
imagine?
one of the conversation. I heard one of the conversation in which Prabhupada was saying that the wife of that captain of Jaladuta, so she was a very good astrologer. She predicted that Prabhupada would live for 100 years. I heard a conversation of
but if he was not done in by his followers. So they did. But you know something, they're so stupid. The GBC are so stupid. They got money and power. How much? Compared to Rockefeller, compared to Birla, how much money do they have? They don't have that much money. Even if they're millionaires, even if they're billionaires, they don't have that much money. And all of that they stole from a pure devotee of the Lord, destroyed his movement so that nobody could go back to Godhead quickly, rapidly, so that the public would not become immersed in the holy name by having Sankirtan flooding the streets by now in every town and village of every city and every country of the world. All of that so they could have a few $1,000s in their pocket.
Right.
Can you imagine? And so then they wanted to become gurus. Well, maybe when we become gurus, we'll become unfathomably rich. And then what at the time of death? Basically, and interestingly, they're not atheists. They believe Krishna exists. They're not like Kamsa. They believe Krishna exists. They believe that they're devotees of Krishna.
Right.
Somehow they seem to think that they fit their lust, their plan. They wanted to become gurus when they're young enough to enjoy it. That's Bhavananda for you. Why do you think Bhavananda wants to be a guru when he's an old man? That's all work and no homosexual pastimes.
Okay, let's continue, Prabhu.
Okay, is that enough for that one?
Yeah. We have been living in the dark shadow of that criminal takeover, ending in the horrific murder of he who still is destined to deliver the living beings on planet Earth for the next 10,000 years. Jai, Srila Prabhupada.
Go ahead.
Okay, yes, Srila Prabhupada's books, his original books, his Transcendental Sound. And
what about Prabhupada personally?
And Prabhupada personally, yes. These are all persons.
Is there any difference between Prabhupada in the temple on the Vyasasan and Prabhupada alive in his body?
No.
So once the GBC is out of the way, trying to block Prabhupada into a corner of yesterdayisms, once that's there, people come into the temple without the GBC, they'll see Prabhupada, who's that? Oh, that's wonderful. They fall down. Just like often they come to do a Buddhist temple. They don't see, oh, there's a dead man that used to be Buddha. And where's the successor Buddha? Oh, where's the successor Buddha? They don't have successor Buddhas. They have priests. So or representative of the Acharya. So the thing is that the Buddha, when you go to a Buddhist temple that's well maintained and worships beautifully, you see Buddha there. So when you come into a Krishna conscious temple post GBC, no, not post, post non-elected GBC, post bogus GBC, you will see Prabhupada will be vividly there. No one will suspect that he's not present in his form.
Right, yes.
And the deities will take on that complexion as well.
They
They already do. They're so beautiful, so engrossing that you look at the deity and you think, this is God.
Mhm.
But can you
Okay.
imagine when they look at Prabhupada that same way?
Yeah. Yeah, new person who has read Prabhupada's books and they come to the temple and they see the, Prabhupada there on the Vyasa-san, they'll exactly know that he's alive.
Yes, but he will be alive.
He is alive. Yes,
Yes, he is alive because he doesn't die.
yes.
How can we say if Prabhupada is pure spirit soul and he's at Uttama Adhikari, how would he die? You might say, well, compare him to the other Gautama Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta. They were not there for 10,000 years. Prabhupada is. They were there to bring Prabhupada to the foreground. He's not just a symbolic figure of a guru that lived some time ago. Let's say 5,000 years ago he lived, but now he's dead. He's still there because he and Krishna are eternal, and Lord Chaitanya is eternal. That's a tough one for me to grasp.
Yeah.
Very tough. You know what I mean?
Yes.
How can I grasp it? But if I want to say, my whole point is, Ramachandra, let's you and me walk into a temple 5,000 years from now and see the ISKCON that Prabhupada wanted. Will Prabhupada be in the temple or not?
He will always be there. Yes.
Well, not always. Will you see him? Will you feel him?
Oh,
Will
yes.
you
10,000
experience
years.
him?
Yes.
If you
Yes.
see him, will you feel the same way or more so than a person that had his physical darshan?
Yes.
People that had Prabhupada's physical darshan basically saw him as a human being
Yes.
with gifted qualities. But when you see him in the temple 5,000 years ago, he will not be seen as a human being. He'll be seen like Buddha, as a transcendental glowing being on the Vyasa-san.
Jai. Okay. So let's continue, Prabhu. Fact, 5,000 years from now, Krishna will exist. Okay, no. Fact, 5,000 years from now, Krishna will still exist in Krishna Loka. Yes, eternally. Fact, 5,000 years from now, Srila Prabhupada will exist like a geode in the center of ISKCON. Yes.
In other words, if you have a geode, it's a rock. So ISKCON building made of bricks and mortar, right? You take this rock and you put it on the Vyasa-san. Inside is this glowing thing that is not subject to time.
Jai.
Namely, Srila Prabhupada's presence as an eternal spiritual master.
Jai.
That's a tough one, isn't it? Because we're so conditioned. I'm so conditioned.
No,
Yes. No, I knew when he wanted to, no, forget somebody. On the Vyasa-san, without the GBC, he will be seen for who he is. Eternally. A spiritual being.
Jai.
Not a statue of a person that's dying. Go ahead.
Fact, 5,000 years from now, ISKCON will exist by name as the absolute and eternal refuge for the living beings who wish to join. To join us due to hearing the pure sound vibration of Srila Prabhupada chanting his Krishna Loka melodies, his cartel style of playing, his Aditala Mardanga beat, and his chakra empowering dance steps known as the Swami step. Jai.
Yeah, can you see? So what will be different than if Prabhupada were personally? It'll be better than ISKCON back then. ISKCON back then with Prabhupada leading a kirtan will be less than 5,000 years from now. Because the people 5,000 years ago, from that, if we're 5,000 years from now, look back 5,000 years, they were just neophyte people that were in their bodies, still identified when they're alive. They still identify with the material bodies. And Prabhupada, oh yeah, he's our guru. He came from India. Sumati Maharaji gave him a boat ride, la, 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 la. They were still coated and covered by material conception.
Yes.
But 5,000 years from now, a person walks into the temple, they don't have to be covered by Maya the way we were.
Right.
That was ISKCON, when Prabhupada was present, was covered by Maya because it was such a new organization.
Right.
But now, 5,000 years from now, the same ISKCON will be there, devoid of Maya.
Right. Okay.
Same temple. You see, I'm saying this in the face of the people that are trying to stagger around saving ISKCON, saving the GBC, downgrade ISKCON to become a Hindu organization or whatever they're trying to do to make ISKCON, female Diksha gurus, trying to make ISKCON a succession of increasingly inadequate people known as gurus. How can that be possible for 5,000 years, so to speak of 10,000 years? Go ahead.
Okay, let me share the screen once more. Here it's saying, fact.
You do more talking, I'll do less talking, okay? I'm just sort of wired.
Fact, what will no longer exist after a few short years from now is the bloated, illicit, unelected, cancerous GBC. Yes. And then they will have been voted off the island.
Okay, so, the island is Kanista Adhikari's platform of ISKCON. ISKCON is an oasis. They'll be voted off the oasis.
Right.
They can call back on if they want, but they're sure going to have to go through quite a bit of torture before they get back on.
All right. Once the metaverse has been fully saturated with descriptions of the endless crimes of the GBC and their unauthorized guru initiators. Okay, let me read it one more time. Once the metaverse has been fully saturated with the descriptions of the endless crimes of the GBC and their unauthorized guru initiators. Yeah. I mean, it's very apparent now, at least to us and a lot of people online, or devotees online.
Yeah, but we want not just us and other people online. We want everyone to see that. Every ISKCON member should say, the king has no clothes. We've been admiring his clothes. Oh, you have such a nice hat. You have such a nice cloak. You have such a nice sword. You have such a nice everything. Actually, the king is naked. It's time to say that.
Right.
Time to expose. In the metaverse means once it gets out, it's like there's Satya Sai Baba. When his disciples found out he had been having pedophilia relationship with his chief followers, his chief disciples, 3 million left his organization. Our organization is tiny by comparison. I would say that at least 95% will leave.
Okay, let's continue. The perverted crimes against Guru Coolies, the homosexual excesses of the supposedly July 9th Ritvik gurus, and the following two major crimes. Number one, each ISKCON temple was created by Lord Krishna to be independently incorporated as ISKCON INC. This means that there would be no possibility of a centralized corporate ISKCON controlling any of the independent temples.
Why not expand on that?
Okay.
We have plenty of time. It's only 9 o'clock. And we're almost through it. So why not give some idea?
Okay. So, I mean, the perverted crimes against guru coolies and the mad behavior of these people, homosexuals, and the July 9th Ritvik gurus, and the following two major crimes. Each ISKCON temple was created by Krishna to be independently incorporated as ISKCON INC. Well, yes, Prabhupada wanted each temple to be independent so they can function without any disruption if one satellite goes down, or if there were some problems, if any.
Yeah, well, obviously the GBC would have to have the power to take out a ISKCON incorporated status from a place that starts doing Texas barbecue.
Yes.
You know, that power would have to be there, but it would be 12 temple presidents leaning on one deviant temple president saying, "Sorry, you can't call yourself ISKCON anymore. You can call yourself Texas barbecue at Chanda's or something like that." You know? But you get that.
Yes.
But the thing is that with the temples independently incorporated, no one can do anything to that temple that the temple doesn't want done to them.
Yeah.
In other words, it would be a voluntary relationship between the GBC and the temple, and a voluntary relationship between one temple and another.
Right.
And with the GBC, facilitated by the GBC, create a confluence, a harmony between independent temples, not control over certain temples to be able to be the boss.
Okay. This means that there would be no possibility of a centralized corporate ISKCON controlling any of the independent temples. Yes. Okay, crime number 2. An elected GBC was to be based on 12 members elected by the vote of the participating temple presidents for 3-year terms. Yes, this is right there in the direction of management.
Yeah, and the direction of management clearly says, you know, suppose you have 50 temples, you put up a slate, maybe they put up 30 people that they'd like to see GBC. You know, they just write it out on a ballot. And out of the ballot, people vote for them. And when you vote for them, the 12 that get the most votes become GBC.
Right.
So it's very, very populist.
These GBC would empower the various temple presidents for renewable 3-year terms and make ISKCON essentially into a representative republic resembling the US Senate and senators. Right.
Yeah, because the whole point when the United States was created was they had all these different places that became states. None of them wanted to be under one rule. None of them wanted a totalitarian government governing them. So they created the Senate so that 2 men from each state would represent that state. And they go into Congress and they have to battle it out there as to what happens to each individual state. You know, the Senate, not Congress, but the Senate. The Congress is different. That would be like if every temple ISKCON member could vote. And it's not practical because you don't know what they're going to be like or how many there are, you know. So you don't need the temple members. It's a republic, not a democracy.
Right.
Democracy, as we can see, is a double-edged sword.
ISKCON was never to be a global corporation. Yes. Because they turned it into a global corporation, they also had global problems, and the global problems are still going on with the various pedophile gurus who are still roaming around. And the members of the temple are powerless to do anything about it. Because
true. Go ahead.
So this is why Prabhupada never wanted the temples to be a global corporation, because once it's a
Yeah.
global corporation, it's top down, not bottom up management.
Could everybody that knows about it, like you and Rupa Manjari, could you sort of like say some of the things that the global corporation demands of the temples and the members of the temples? Sort of a short list of what they're demanding, what they
Oh,
say.
well, many devotees in the ISKCON world and outside of different, common sense, people who have common sense, want certain devotees who are appointed to be gurus to be excommunicated or, turned over to the police. But the ISKCON corporation, the global corporation, they do not want this. So they are still having this person roam around and visiting temples and doing all kinds of stuff.
Okay, I was thinking more about what does it take to be an ISKCON temple, and what does it take to be a member of ISKCON, or by their rules. I'm not talking about what they're doing, this action or that action based on whatever. I'm talking about their what is it called? Their Rupa, what is it called?
GBC of West Bengal?
Huh?
You mean the GBC of West Bengal or the bylaws?
Oh, yeah, the GBC of West Bengal. What is it? Their rules called?
They're called the ultimate ecclesiastical authority.
Yeah, that's what they call themselves. But what are the rules called? Rupa, are you there?
The bylaws? I don't know.
The bylaws.
Right. What about the
GBC bylaws are very specific in the extreme extent of control that the GBC has over temples and devotees, and also over Prabhupada, because they say that because the successor gurus, being successor gurus, have the right, as do popes in the Catholic Church, to change the conclusions of previous acharyas.
Yes.
Namely, Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah.
They feel they have that authorization.
Okay. Yes.
So that's what I was talking about. But what does the GBC say? Who can become? What does it take to become a member of ISKCON that you've experienced? This is what I was looking for.
I'm not sure what is the bylaw saying about members, but the members have.
Did you say that no one can become a member unless they're accepted by the GBC?
Member, or do you mean directors of the corporation? I'm not sure. What do you mean? Can you be more specific?
Well, I learned it from you.
Can you ask the question again? To be part of the institution, the corporate global ISKCON corporation, you must sign documents pledging allegiance to the GBC of West Bengal, which give them the ultimate ecclesiastical authority over their spiritual life and how they manage the temples and how they conduct their preaching and all this. So ultimately, they are.
That's what we are saying has got to go, right?
Yes.
And why? The thing is, supposing they say that the ultimate ecclesiastical authority, which is a big stretch, but what gives them the qualification to be an ecclesiastical authority? I mean, you would imagine ecclesiastical authority would have to go through rigid vetting and testing to become accepted as an ecclesiastic authority.
Well, who gives them that power? They appoint amongst themselves, and people who are of the same nature, they put up. Put them up.
You hit the nail on the head. They decide amongst themselves, but who gives them the power to decide amongst themselves? Where do they derive the Shakti or spiritual potency or divine authorization to decide amongst themselves. We're talking about a Krishna conscious organization designed to bring people back to Godhead. That means connection with Krishna must be there. So how did Krishna give them the authorization to do that?
Krishna didn't give them the authorization.
So where did they get it? Did Prabhupada give it to them?
Never gave it to them.
So in other words, you're saying that these men are total frauds. They do not represent Krishna or Prabhupada.
Yes, because they never followed the instructions of how
It
Krishna
doesn't
and
matter following anything. They're not able to do what they don't have ecclesiastical authority. How can they say they have ecclesiastical authority when they have not been given it by higher authority?
Yeah.
Guru Shastra Sadhu, has there ever been a GBC in the history of the Sampradaya? Like that? An elected GBC?
No,
I don't think so. Have you ever heard of it?
no.
The Lord Chaitanya have an unelected GBC? I don't think he did.
Okay, let's continue, Prabhu.
But anyhow, but we have to make sure of that point,
Yes.
because it's so easy to dislike them for being bullies without realizing their very language is not authorized by anything other than themselves, and they are not authorized because they rejected the basis of their own authorization, namely the direction of management and their spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada.
Hmm.
So that's why they have no authority. If we resent or fight them on the basis of the things that they do under their so-called authority, we're stupid idiots.
Hmm.
We're just fighting a puppet. We're fighting a shadow on the wall. Why do you fight something that doesn't exist? Remember, Lord Krishna was listening. Pandraka didn't exist as Vishnu. He had two arms of his own, but he had two wooden arms that he had with ornaments and whatnot. And I helped illustrate that picture. And Pandraka kept that going to Lord Krishna and giving him stuff like the GBC would. Oh yes, well, our ecclesiastical authority, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Krishna, and he said, "What do you think of that, Lord Krishna?" And Krishna said, "That's not who the words of a man who is about to die are not interesting." And he killed him. He killed Pandraka. So this is what we're dealing with. These guys say they have ecclesiastical authority. We can turn to them and say, a man who is about to die, we're not interested in his so-called ecclesiastical authority. You have none. Can you show us where you got it? Can you trace its origin? Can you show us where Prabhupada wrote about it, ecclesiastical authority? Or is that something you picked up straight from the Catholic Church? Which is where they picked it up. There's no ecclesiastical authority in Vaishnava literature, but there is exactly that language in the Catholic Church. Okay, do you see that? Ramachandra.
Yes, I see that, Prabhu. Let me get going here.
Yeah, so this is what our key thing. It's building on that one observation that is going to win us the whole movement in 3 years. Because anybody with a rational mind will see that whoever wrote about that was a cheater and a fake, or a Catholic, cardinal of the Catholic Church, but they're not in the Catholic Church. They're in ISKCON pretending they're in the Catholic Church, or pretending that the Catholic Church has the authority to create ecclesiastical authority in others, which it doesn't. From our point of view, it doesn't. And from the point of view of Krishna consciousness, it doesn't to the 100th degree. No, it doesn't. Anyhow, go ahead.
Okay.
Could you read that? Could you read that one sentence one more time?
Yes.
So that people will refer to what we're talking to.
Yes. ISKCON was never to be a global corporation.
Okay. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay. ISKCON temples were never to be under the control of the GBC. Yes. GBC would be just overlooking in ways to help them expand and buy more properties and what else?
Oh yeah, the GBC temples would be under the guidance of the GBC, under the mentorship of the GBC, under the tutelage of the GBC, under the inspiration of the GBC, but never, ever, ever under the control of the GBC. Okay?
Yes. Okay. In this way, ISKCON could have grown exponentially over the last 52 years and have prevented such wars as Afghanistan War, Iraq War, and now the Ukraine War. Try. These unelected GBC have practically made ISKCON impotent to deliver the fallen souls in so presently extremely trying times. This
I mean, where are these streets being flooded with Sankirtan parties the way they were in 1969 from temples like Los Angeles temple? We would go out into Hollywood to two or three parties, 20 men each, chanting in the streets and collecting money and distributing back to Godheads. Where is that happening? Well, they have people selling books, but they do not have this chanting.
Right.
There's a reason for that, because when Prabhupada saw how the chanting was being perverted, how they rejected his dance steps, his melodies, his mridanga beats, and everything in favor of Achyutananda's bogus Bengali stuff that he got from the eunuchs and the Ramakrishna mission and stuff like that, the balls from the Ramakrishna mission. When he saw that was going, he saw there was not going to be any advantage to chanting in the streets. So essentially, Prabhupada stopped the chanting in the streets and didn't stop it, it died of its own legs, but he encouraged the devotees just to go out and sell books. Because he actually said, the devotees may fail, the temples may fail. No, the temples may fail, the devotees may fail, but my books will not fail. So he said that. And so it was a last-ditch, desperate move on his part to escape the toxic work of the GBC to the degree that he gave the GBC a profit motive to sell books. Of course, they went and changed the books to make them more popularly sellable.
Right, so we're coming down to the wire. Okay. These unelected GBC have practically made ISKCON impotent to deliver the fallen souls in our presently extremely trying times. And the last one, they can be fully exposed, discredited, and distanced from ISKCON within the next 3 years. John.
Okay, so what do you think will it take to get the GBC distanced from ISKCON in the next 3 years? That sentence is just a talking point. What do you think?
Well, first of all, they should know that the present system which is going on right now is not what Prabhupada exactly wanted. And they should go to the founding documents, the direction of management.
Yeah, but they know all about the direction of management.
No, not Vishwakarma Prabhu didn't know about it. A lot of people don't know about it.
He just had a big seminar on the direction of management.
Well, they know it now, but not the average ISKCON.
But let's put it this way. Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
I said the average ISKCON guy in the temple or at home, they do not know what the direction of management is. I didn't know about it until I started reading and talking to you and studying it. So now getting to know,
Yeah.
wow, it's such an eye opener.
Okay, but we're being so polite, aren't we?
Hmm.
We're being so polite.
Polite to who?
The GBC.
Oh yeah, they're criminals because they have hidden all
Oh,
this.
that's a. Why do you say they're criminals?
Because they're hiding all this instructions that Srila Prabhupada wanted, how to increase the
what?
temples. Huh?
Who cares? Who cares? What's the difference?
Hmm?
Who cares if they hide Prabhupada's? That was 52 years ago. Get with it, man. Live in the present.
That is the
GBC
present.
here. You're not going to get rid of it. How are you going to get rid of it? What can you do to get rid of the GBC? They're here. Just have to get used to them. That's
They're
what they
here?
would say, right? How are we going to get past that obstacle?
If the people start taking control and from the
They don't
local
want to
level.
take control. They want to be patsies.
Hmm?
The people don't want to take control. They want their ISKCON gurus to be their ticket back to Godhead. And they want the GBC to provide them nice comfy temples so they don't have to go out on Sankirtan chanting. So, I mean, what is it that we can present? How can we describe the GBC that will put them in such a way that the public in general of the United States and the world will reject them? And of course, if the world rejects them and exposes them, will not the temple residents also reject them?
Yes. So how
So
are they
we
going to
need
do
to,
it?
in other words, what I'm saying, we need to develop the language for getting the GBC out. It's not enough just to say, well, they didn't follow Prabhupada's direct order, you know.
Yes.
So what? They've known that. They've known that all along. I've been preaching that for decades.
Mhm.
I've been preaching that since 1992. I was preaching it before 1992, but I hadn't seen the direction of management since 1970. So I was basically preaching it since 1970. How far did I get? Basically nowhere, right? Would you say?
Yeah. You did not have the metaverse.
I know I didn't have the metaverse. So the thing is, can we now take a turn of approach and say, we need to look at the GBC for what they actually are? A, they're not disciples of Prabhupada because they rejected Prabhupada. How can you be a disciple of your spiritual master if you reject his direct order?
Direct written order, no. Signed order.
Or
Direct
how
written
about
signed
verbal
order.
order? How about
Verbal.
verbal order?
Yes, that also.
If Bhaktisiddhanta told Prabhupada go preach in the West, and Prabhupada went to China, that would be rejecting his spiritual master's order, verbal order.
Right. Verbal order, yes.
But he didn't. He went to America, to the West. Would he have
Yes.
gone to the West upon his own? Who knows? But his spiritual master said, go to the West, so he went to the West. If he said, no, I don't want to go to the West, I'm going to do it my way, because there's more money in it if I go to China or go to somewhere else, you know, Russia. You see what I'm really getting to? It's where we need to take a big gulp of water and swallow it and start talking differently.
Hmm.
We need to talk about breaking the law. ISKCON, GB, the direction of management. You may say, well, is that a material law? No, it's not a material law. Which is more important in Krishna consciousness, a material law or a spiritual law? I mean, there's so many things in the Bhagavad Gita that people that like material law would argue with, wouldn't they? But we accept it because the spiritual authority says it's true, correct?
Yes.
So can we say that our analysis of the GBC must come from a spiritual authority, not from a legal or material or even a contractual piece of paper with 12 names on it authority? It has to come from the intent of the person who sent Srila Prabhupada to earth to deliver us, not for 7 years or 10 years, not for that, but for 10,000 years. See, we have to make that big leap, that big difference, a big bridge between today and the end of the golden age of Kali. And we have to see either the beginning of this paper starts out to describe Prabhupada is going to be there at the end of the golden age of Kali, alive and well in his temples. Well, how do you mean alive and well in his body? Oh yeah, okay, sir. You're a devotee, right? You believe in Krishna, right? You believe in the spirit soul? Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, you do believe in the spirit soul as being your real self. Oh, you thought about it a few times? Yeah, but would you say basically it's probably true? Yes, okay. And so you say, okay, will you be there in 5,000? If you're eternal, can you be there in 5,000 years or 10,000 years yourself? If you can be, why can't Prabhupada? Prabhupada is transcendental. He is not subject to being in this body. He can come in a deity form, like Buddha did. Right? Why does Prabhupada have to be in a physical form to be who he is? We have to say either Prabhupada will be the founder Acharya of ISKCON 10,000 years from now, or he is no longer the founder Acharya of ISKCON because he died and there is no more ISKCON as it was when he came here. They've changed it. Or maybe they've improved it. You see what I'm suggesting? Ramachandra.
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
The conversation with you.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
So how do we do it? So, I've said in various times, a crime 50 years ago, a crime committed 52 years ago, from the legal point of view of the law, is still punishable after 52 years if you get caught, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So can we say, well, that happened 52 years ago? No, we don't have to say that. It happened. Never mind when it happened. So they're criminals. Can they explain their criminality in relationship to Srila Prabhupada? While expecting the same standard in treatment, if they become gurus, do they expect their disciple to disregard their written order, the way they disregarded Prabhupada's written order? Or is that simply out of the question?
Simply out of the question. So why aren't they following Srila Prabhupada's instructions out of the question?
So this is becoming the conversation we can have with people who think they accept the GBC. And GBC's interpretation of Prabhupada said, is it out of the question or not? And you're saying, no, it's not out of the question. Oh, so can we hold the GBC today accountable for what they did 52 years ago, which out of 10,000 years is not such a vast amount of time. Right?
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Okay, so what else can we say? They prevented by making the temples all part of a global corporation, they prevented the temples from proliferating left and right all over the place.
Yes.
I'd like to use the example. How many temples would you say, out of 800,000 people in Los Angeles, Ramachandra, how many temples would you say there would be there? How many temples what do you think of the number of temples for 800,000 people?
Well, if each devotee is a temple, so Los Angeles probably has at least 8,000 people, 8,000 devotees, no? More?
No, I'm talking about temples, physical temples where you can go and worship.
Oh, at least a dozen or more than a dozen.
A dozen for 800,000 people? Is that enough for 8,000 people? 800,000 people?
Or 8,000 temples.
Or 80,000 temples. I mean, if you have 8 million people, you could have a temple for every 10,000 population.
Right, right.
And out of the 10,000 population, 40 or 50 can go to that temple. So out of 10,000, 40 devotees. That's not a big proportion, is
It's
it?
not, no. Yeah.
So how many temples are there in Los Angeles? Please tell me. I would like to go and visit them.
One.
One?
Mhm.
How is that possible?
Because how they're managing the so-called GBC, they have a cap on the word, and how Prabhupada wanted the institution to be registered. No one can register on the ISKCON.
Yeah. And you know what happened? I was living in that one temple in Los Angeles.
Mm.
I'm sort of speaking for the public as well as to you.
Mhm.
And they began to develop satellite temples, or what they called preaching centers. Do you know what they would do in their preaching centers?
No?
They would sell hats and paraphernalia and books to support Los Angeles Temple.
Wow. Okay, so they were, oh wow. They were trying
So
to
they would
just,
have they had maybe like 20 preaching centers that none of them took it. Some of them have actually turned into temples like Las Vegas has. But they just went there to get money to bring back to Los Angeles.
wow.
Can you
That's it.
imagine? Yeah, so that's what the GBC has done. They've turned it. That's what Kirtanananda did as a GBC. He sent out women in Karvi clothes. He sent them out to have sex for money. Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's worth it. So, because look, we built a palace, Prabhupada's palace of gold for gold. So it's enough, and women are whores anyhow, so why not let the women go out and become prostitutes so that they will do something valuable with their sex instead of simply try to avoid having sex except once a month to have children. That's the way he thinks. That's GBC mentality, you see.
Right.
So do you see, you and I obviously have a ways to go.
Always.
Not always, right now. We have a
Yeah.
ways to go to get to the point where we can convince the members of ISKCON, convince the public through the metaverse,
Mhm.
and convince some of the GBCs of the crimes that have been committed that must be rectified.
Mm.
We can convince life members. We can convince big donors. I mean, there's lots of big donors that are giving money to Madhu Pandit. And there's other big donors that are giving money to the Bombay Temple,
Mhm.
Bombay ISKCON. So you see, that's our job, it seems, no? I mean, if we want this to turn around in 3 years, we have to completely rethink. You have to, and I have to rethink our understanding of the GBC. And some, oh, but GBC. We have to think, these are criminals. They were hot on the trail, just like sheriffs in the Wild West were galloping on our horses after the bad guys. And when we catch them, we'll hang them.
Jai.
You know?
Right.
For Bonnie and Clyde, we'll chase them down and shoot them. They're criminals. We have so many examples in America of criminals. And if you chase them down, you catch them, and there's a shootout, you shoot them.
Jai,
So
we
you
haven't.
see, now do you think that we could, do you believe that we can do that?
Yeah. Jai Narayan has lots of guns.
Yeah, that's why we want China Narayan to be involved with this. If he takes up this idea of criminalizing the GBC with the same fervor that he took up the July 9th letter, he could do it by himself.
Jai, we got Janaspriya Prabhu's from Hawaii is joining. So Hare Krishna
Jai.
Prabhu.
So go ahead. You want to
Krishna.
we still have more than 15 minutes left. What do we want to do? Go ahead.